Good evening, everyone. I would like to welcome members of the Cabinet, officers and members of the public viewing on YouTube to this virtual meeting of the Cabinet. I am Councillor Dina Romero and I am the leader of Bath and North East Somerset Council. Before I call out the names of other participants to introduce themselves, I will now ask everyone to remember with a minute's silence the 4 workers killed at Avonmouth water treatment plant last week. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. I will now call out the names of the other participants for this meeting and I will ask them to introduce themselves. So, Councillor Richard Samuel.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Richard Samuel, I'm Deputy Leader and I'm Cabinet Member for Resources.
Councillor Paul Crossley. Can you unmute yourself, Paul?
Good evening, I'm Councillor Paul Crossley and I'm Cabinet Member for Communities, which covers a wide range of subjects from heritage to parks.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Tim Ball.
Hello, I'm Councillor Tim Ball and Cabinet Member of Housing, Planning and Economic Development.
So can I ask everyone who's not to speak to put themselves on mute? Thank you. Councillor David Wood.
Hi, I'm Councillor David Wood, Cabinet Member for Neighbourhood Services.
Councillor Joanna Wright.
Good evening, I am Joint Cabinet Member for Transport Services.
Rob Appleyard.
Councillor Rob Appleyard, Cabinet Member for Adult Services, Safeguarding and Public Health.
Thank you, Rob. Councillor Kevin Guy.
Hello there, I'm Councillor Kevin Guy, I'm the Cabinet Member for Children's Services.
And Councillor Neil Butters.
Good afternoon, good evening. Councillor Neil Butters, Joint Cabinet Member for Transport Services.
Thank you. Also present are Will Godfrey, who is the Chief Executive of the Council.
Good evening.
Michael Hewitt, who is the Interim Monitoring Officer.
Present.
Thank you. And Jack Latkovich, who is the Senior Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening.
Thank you, Jack. The Council has agreed a protocol to cover virtual meetings, and this meeting will operate in line with that protocol in accordance with Coronavirus Regulations 2020. The meeting has the same status and validity as a meeting held in the Guildhall. Can I remind members, officers and speakers to keep background noise to a minimum, to only speak one person at a time and not to speak over others. Please mute your microphones when not speaking and then unmute when I invite you to speak. Please indicate if you wish to speak by using the chat facility on Zoom by typing MIS, may I speak, and I will call you in turn to speak. Councillor Richard Samuel will take over the chairing of the meeting if I have to leave the meeting or if I lose my connection. If Cabinet is required to take a vote, I will read out each member's name in alphabetical order. Each member should then clearly state if they are for or against the motion. This will enable the Senior Democratic Services Officer to accurately record the vote and will also ensure that decision taking is clear to the public who are viewing on YouTube. On some occasions, Cabinet members' video feed may go blank and you'll see this possibly as a black screen. Some Cabinet members use their iPads to participate at this meeting and they may look at agenda papers which would temporarily switch off their video feed. Those Cabinet members will still be at the meeting as they will be able to hear and to be heard at the meeting, which are virtual meeting requirements under Corona Regulations 2020, as I stated previously. It is my intention to have a short break after an hour or thereabouts, unless it looks like we are near the end of the agenda. So do I have any questions? Okay, so I will move on. So the next item is apologies for absence. And I have received an apology from Councillor Sarah Warren, who is the Cabinet Member for Climate Emergency. The next item are declarations of interest, and I have not been notified of any. Urgent business agreed by the Chair. There are none. Questions from public and councillors. So we have received 20 questions from councillors. Each councillor may ask a maximum of 2 supplementary questions. I will now read through I won't read all the questions out, but I will read the names of those that submitted a question and to whom they submitted it, and just have confirmation from the Senior Democratic Service Officer whether or not there is a supplementary for that question. So I will start with the first question, which is from Councillor Grant Johnson, and that is to Councillor Joanna Wright. Is there a supplementary? Thank you. The second question, again, is from Councillor Grant Johnson, and that is to Councillor Joanna Wright.
No supplementary.
Third question is from Councillor Grant Johnson to Councillor Joanna Wright.
No supplementary.
Fourth question from Councillor Grant Johnson to Councillors Joanna Wright and Neil Butters.
No supplementary.
The fifth question is from Councillor Grant Johnson, and it is to Joanna Wright.
No supplementary.
The sixth question is from Councillor Grant Johnson, and that is to myself.
No supplementary.
The seventh question is from Councillor Grant Johnson and is again to myself.
No supplementary.
The eighth question is from Councillor Grant Johnson, and this is to Councillor Sarah Warren.
Councillor Grant Johnson has supplementary on this question. I believe he's already in the room.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Councillor Grant Johnson to ask your supplementary question.
Hello, everyone. Instead of making the heartfelt and much needed apology for the stress this planning application calls to residents, the Cabinet member decided to respond by reiterating to me that the Cabinet does not make decisions on planning applications. While that might be true, will she admit that the Liberal Democrat chair of Planning Committee had every opportunity to call this controversial planning application into the Planning Committee, but decided not to, and instead agreed with the Conservative Vice Chair to delegate the decision to officers acting on behalf of this council?
As Sarah Warren isn't here, I'm going to invite Councillor Tim Ball, if you would wish to answer that question.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Johnson knows the planning rules quite clearly. It's down to local members to also refer the matters to the chair of the planning committee if they wish the matter to be called in. Local members do not do this, so the chair of the planning committee exercises delegation quite correctly.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ball. The ninth question is from Councillor Grant Johnson, and that is also to Councillor Sarah Warren. Is there a supplementary for this?
That's correct. Councillor Grant Johnson has supplementary question on this question.
In the Cabinet member's response, she makes reference to the clear and demonstrated progress being made by this council in reference to its commitment to the climate and ecological emergencies. Can I ask the Cabinet member if this administration measures progress by the amount of fossil fuel generators it approves, or by the amount of rare geological ecosystems it chooses to build houses on, like those on the Tuffer Fields in English Combe Lane?
Councillor Tim Ball, would you like to answer that question?
Seems strange, doesn't relate to the original question whatsoever. Well, I'll do my best in answering the question whatsoever. All local planning policies go through the issue of going out to consultation, as the current plan will do. It then comes back into the council for the council to make a decision on its policies. Officers will work on the policies adopted by council. Cross-party working always takes place in the development of planning policy, and I hope Councillor Johnson and his colleagues will take part in this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ball. So the 10th question is, sorry, I probably need to invite Councillor Johnson now to watch the remainder of this on YouTube. But the 10th question, sorry, is from Councillor Karen Warrington, and this is to Councillor David Wood.
There is no supplementary question.
Thank you. The 11th question is from Councillor Karen Warrington, and this is to Councillor Tim Ball.
Councillor Warrington has a supplementary question on this question, and I believe that she's in the room.
I am, thank you, Chair.
Welcome, Karen. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Ball, for your answer on that. And I understand that property owners can choose their own materials for their drives. However, I have two pieces of evidence that seem to contradict that. So I just wanted clarity around that. One is I've seen a planning application for a new driveway, and that did say that it had to be block paving or bitmac. And also I downloaded the schedule of conditions to apply for a dropped curb. And this states that the drive should meet the highway at right angles and be constructed of a consolidated material such as bitmac, concrete or blocks, subject to planning approval. Perhaps the Cabinet member could just clarify that for me, which statement is correct, or is it an amalgamation of both?
Councillor Ball.
Thank you. The attachment provided relates to application to drop a curb which is outside of the scope of planning system and is considered under separate highway legislation. It relates to works to enable the crossing of a highway, footway or verge only. Notwithstanding, the planning system does not prevent applications for a range of materials or construction methods, including those specified. Grass grids may not be more permeable than block or other surfaces, as permeability does not solely relate to top surfaces, but also to the substructure construction. Substructure construction.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ball. The 12th question is from Karen Warrington, and that is to Councillor Sarah Warren and also Tim Ball.
Yes, there is a supplementary on that question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thanks very much again, Councillor Ball. I understand the situation. However, there's a lot of, quite heavy light pollution in the rural areas, and it does seem rather contradictory that neighbourhood planning policies, which are written by local volunteers who live in the neighbourhoods, they're approved by Baines Planning and then independently inspected by a public inspector. And they do seem to be ignored because it's claimed that they don't meet the 6 tests of conditions, planning conditions. Perhaps a Cabinet member could explain to my residents why it wouldn't be reasonable, so reasonableness under test 6, to set a condition on a development, whether that be a small extension or a large development, which is on the edges of villages and adjacent to protected habitats such as SNCIs, SSSIs, bats, nature habitats, which would be reasonable given that the council declared a nature emergency recently. I'm not suggesting that in the middle of villages where there are street lights that these conditions should be applied. I'm suggesting that in specific areas they should be potentially be applied. And I wondered if the Cabinet member could comment on that, please.
Councillor Ball.
I'll do my best. Paragraph 55 of the National Planning Policy Framework makes clear that planning conditions should be kept to a minimum and only used when they satisfy the following tests: 1, necessary; 2, relevant to planning; 3, relevant to development to be permitted; 4, enforceable; 5, precise; and 6, reasonable in all of our aspects and necessary to meet all of these tests on any condition applied. Planning practice guidance advises that conditions should only be imposed on a blanket basis. Not be imposed on a blanket basis. Decision maker must consider and give weight to a range of materials, factors including but not limited to the nature of development, the scale of development, the location of development, the purpose of development, and all of the material considerations, including other planning designations, such as these referred to in the question. Decision maker must assess the harm on a case-by-case basis, and review of officer reports identifies that locally made policies are being taken into account, and this is site by site assessment is happening with regard to these policies. Harm that justifies a restricted condition is more likely to occur where the scale of development is significant. The location is more sensitive, the area is otherwise relatively light-free, and the nature of the development emits light, particularly in an area where there are no such emissions already. However, there can be no broad application of conditions to impose restraint. Each case must be independently assessed. Where conditions apply that do not meet all these tests, the applicant has the right of appeal to the planning inspectorate. The planning inspectorate can report more costs against the local authority where conditions are found to not been met, not meet the tests, and these costs can be considerable. This will be given in writing to Karen anyway, so she can follow it through fully.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ball. The 13th question is from Councillor Vic Pritchard to Councillor Richard Samuel. Do we have a supplementary, Jack?
No supplementary.
The 14th question is from Councillor Vic Pritchard, and that is to Councillor Joanna Wright. Any supplementaries?
No supplementary.
And then the next question is, just bear with me, I managed to cut that off on my print, is from
Councillor Vic Pritchard to me, I think. Chair.
Thank you very much. Yes, I was just looking at an alternative sheet. So Councillor Vic Pritchard to Councillor Rob Appleyard.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Councillor Pritchard, for your question. It is a question that's very much in the minds of all of our residents. As you can appreciate, this is a very fast-moving piece of work, and it solely relies or sits with the National Health Service to bring together a vaccination process that obviously covers all of our residents. We can't give you anything definitive at the moment, but we would look to give you an update within 5 working days of this meeting. One thing that is worth noting, this is possibly the largest single piece of work the National Health Service will undertake. And the only message that we would say to residents is that please, when it gets rolled out, please wait to be called. But as I said, we'll give an update to Councillor Pritchard following this meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Appleyard. Question 16 is from Councillor Paul Myers to Councillor Joanna Wright. Do we have a supplementary here?
There's no supplementary.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Myers to Councillor Richard Samuel.
There is no supplementary.
Question 18 is from Councillor Paul May to myself.
There is no supplementary.
Councillor Robin Moss is asking a question of Councillor Rob Appleyard.
There is no supplementary.
And
just to indicate that there will be an answer in 5 working days.
Thank you very much, Councillor Appleyard, for that addition. And then the final question is from Councillor Paul May, and this is to Councillor Joanna Wright. Is there a supplementary for this question?
There is no supplementary.
Thank you. So we now move on to item 6, which is statements, deputations or petitions from the public and councillors. There are 4 registered speakers for this meeting, and 1 speaker wishes to speak on 2 agenda items. So I'm going to ask each in turn if they wish to speak to the item if it is on the agenda. I would also like to confirm that Cabinet has received an email from Gavin Smith from Transport for Greater Bristol regarding WECA. becoming an integrated transport authority. I believe this was just sent to us though for information, and no one is expected here to be making that statement to us. Thank you, Jack. I'd now like to invite David Redwell to address the Cabinet, as I believe you wish to speak about an item that is not on the agenda.
Yes, thank you very much. I wish to again come back to the issue of regional governance and the work that's been going on with WECA. It is very important we sort this out. I've been looking now at other devolution deals in North Tyne, in Cambridge and Peterborough, all of which seem to be moving towards, in the case of North Tyne, moving towards including South Tyneside and actually putting in more light rail schemes and more railway lines, as well as bus priorities. We do need to sort a deal out for the government likes to deal with city regions like Bath and Bristol. And not having North Somerset in that region makes it very difficult to plan across boundaries, to make it work as a cohesive authority, and also prevents us getting every amount of government money we could from the Exchequer. So I do raise the issue again that there should be a conversation between the leaders of Baines, North Somerset, South Gloucestershire and Bristol. Bristol, by the way, are calling a special scrutiny commission on this subject on the 6th of January to see what response there is from Robert Jenrick and Luke Hall. And if necessary, it's such an important issue, consider whether or not there should be an election in the WECA area in 2021. I make this point because I'm aware today from further correspondence that the Somerset MPs in our area are actually still pursuing a greater Somerset agenda. And they're still asking for this authority and North Somerset to be joined in to the rural county of Somerset. Now, that's not what you voted for, and it's not what North Somerset said. But nevertheless, the local MPs, with the exception of the MP for Bath, is still pursuing that agenda, which is quite concerning. We've got to sort this issue of city governance and money for Bath and Bristol. We've got light rail projects, rapid transit projects, railway improvement projects, Salford Station, St Anne's Station, all of which need deals with government money and Department for Transport. They need a clear definition of an area to invest in, to deliver services in. Bath is a very small authority, and we need to make progress. Finally, on the low traffic neighbourhoods, we support that. And I've just been told today they were drawing the catering on the Bristol, Bath, London, Waterloo trains from the 17th of January, which Neil may wish to take up with the Department for Transport. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for your statement. You seem to have the remarkable ability to actually submit two statements, and I absolutely agree with the comments you make around North Somerset's place within WECA. I'm going to invite Councillor Butters, though, to address some of the points that you made in your original submitted statement. So I call Councillor Butters, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your statement, David. Were you aware that James Freeman, MD First West of England, has now agreed to divert the afternoon D2 school bus, renumbered number D2S, via road on its journey back from Bath to Frome? And this is what I've learned today. And also that James has stated that they do in fact have passenger assistants on duty at Bath bus station, and have operated and continue to operate an enhanced cleaning regime, both for the bus station itself and the buses serving it. Thank you.
I'm very grateful to what was 24 hours then, Neil, because I met myself with the WECA officers yesterday and raised the D2S service. And I'm sure you've done a lot of work as well. So I think it's a good outcome. On the issue of cleaning, I'm very pleased with that. I will always still to point out that there is still room for improvement on making sure the buses that come out of Bath Western Island Bus Garage are fully cleaned and up to what we call COVID security standards. But as a whole, as long as they keep cleaning, I think that's extremely important. But I do welcome the work on the D2S. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. I'd now like to ask Councillor Sean Stevenson McGool if he is here, if he would like to speak now. As I understand, he is registered to speak on agenda item 11. Councillor Stevenson McGould, do you wish to speak now or at the item?
Could I speak at the item, please?
Of course you may. Then I will also ask you if you would like to speak now or at the item on the local plan partial update, which would be item 12.
On the item, please.
Thank you. May I ask you to close your video down and wait until you're called then for that item. Councillor Manda Rigby, who I cannot see. Is Manda here? There is Manda. Would you like to speak now, Councillor Rigby, or at the item?
I will speak now in the hope that the Cabinet will still remember what I said when they get to the item, please.
Okay, then please feel free to address us.
Okay, and can I thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity to address you this evening. I'd just like to make a comment on one of your agenda items, which is the local plan partial refresh. The world has changed significantly since the last local plan was adopted, and because of reasons outside of our control, a new local plan won't be in place for at least a couple of years. So I really, really welcome the opportunity to do what we can right now to make our policies reflect our aspirations. I'm very pleased that our communities will have the opportunity through the consultation period to make their views known. And I'll just pick out a few of the elements in the time I've got available. Our communities will have the chance to say what they think about HMOs, about whether we need policies to protect those HMOs already licensed from growing too large for the nearby amenities, or that they change the nature of the locality to the detriment of providing a mix of property suitable for all of our residents. Our communities will have the chance to say what they think about where purpose-built student accommodation is most appropriate, and whether or not it should be built on the university campuses rather in the heart of the city. Our community will be able to input into policies making the climate and ecological emergencies that this council has declared real and tangible in our planning processes, though some of this I acknowledge will need to be done in the full local plan. And lastly, in my own ward of Bathwick, our community will be able to say what they see now as appropriate on the rec. And I hope that the Cabinet takes the route of saying in this consultation that the best route is to delete SB2 in the local plan and then revisit it in full in the full plan. Given the climate emergency, the ecological emergency, not to mention COVID, the previous allocation as potentially a larger capacity stadium with an option of a large car park, when we are trying to keep cars out of the centre and the specifications for crowd management in the post-COVID era are unknown, makes this seem very outdated and needing of a full review. And I believe this can best be achieved by deleting SB2 in the current partial review and doing a full review when we look at the local plan. Thank you very much indeed for listening, and I hope you have a very successful rest of your meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Rigby. If you just stay there for a moment, I will just see if I have any Cabinet who would like to ask you a question. Councillor Timble.
Thank you, Amanda. I'm sure you're very much aware it's a consultation document this evening. And do you understand that matters have to go to consultation so all residents can respond?
Absolutely. That's why I said it. I so welcome the fact that our communities will have the chance to respond on all these very, very important issues.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So thank you for your statement, and we'll obviously take that into account when we reach that item. So the last statement that I've been notified of is from Councillor Paul Myers. Councillor Paul Myers, would you like to say if you would wish to speak now or if you'd wish to speak at the item? It is the last item on our agenda.
I would like to speak now, if I could, please.
Of course you may.
So am I on?
You are, yes, sorry, please speak.
Yes, so on item 14, the future of destination management arrangements. Given the importance of tourism to our local economy, I'm astounded that this administration is proposing this evening handing such an important and vital function over to a new, untried, untested quango over which it appears to have little or no control. The report itself states in section 3.7 that tourism is a vital sector to the Bath and North East Somerset economy, employing in the region of 9,000 people, approximately 10% of all Bain's employment. Given the devastating impacts of COVID-19 on the sector, supporting the tourism business now is in the future is critical to securing those jobs and people's livelihoods. in the wider economy. Bath didn't suddenly become the destination for tourists. As far as I can see, researching today, it's been underway for 2,883 years. According to legend, King Vladud discovered the benefits of our bubbling spring around 863 BC, and I take the view that he was probably the city's first destination management champion. Then came the Romans, who did their bit to get visitors to come. Then there was Beau Nash, our finest destination manager, I believe, from 1705 until his death in 1761. Ever since, we've been promoting the city as a destination as it's developed, as it is today, into a World Heritage Site. So why is this administration handing over control of our destination management and diluting the message and effort across such a huge area? Apparently, the aim is to save 2 million, but at what cost and impact to the local economy, and within that, the council's own income? In section 312, for example, of the report, it doesn't even specify that the 3 businesses noted for representation have to be from Bath and North East Somerset. If this cabinet approves the proposals before us today, I don't believe you'll ever be forgiven for the undoubted damage you're about to inflict on the city and the local economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Myers. Does any of Cabinet wish to ask a question of Councillor Myers? Your comments will obviously be taken into account when we reach that item. Thank you. Can I invite all of our speakers to now watch the remainder of this meeting on YouTube, unless they are staying to speak at the relevant item. We now move on to the minutes of the meeting of the 5th of November. I would like some confirmation that these minutes are a correct record of that meeting. Thank you, Rob. Do I have a seconder? I think that's a thumbs up, and possibly from Paul. Thank you very much. We will sign and date those in due course. We now move to item 8, which is the single member items which have been requisitioned to Cabinet, and there are none. And item 9, matters referred by PDS bodies to Cabinet. Again, there are none. The next item is to note, and this is the recent single member decisions that have been taken. Can I ask all if you are happy to note, and if you're not happy to note, could you put put a comment to that effect in the chat? Thank you. So I'll just give it a moment. I'm not seeing anything in the chat. Therefore, can I assume we are all happy to note? Okay, thank you. So we now move on to item 11, which is livable neighbourhoods. I hope that Councillor Stevenson McGall is still here, and I would like to invite him to address the meeting on this item, please. Councillor Stevenson McGall.
Thank you very much, Councillor Romero. Firstly, I'd like to warmly welcome the Council's Climate Emergency Action Plan, which we approved just over a year ago, which recommended a major shift to mass transport, walking and cycling as ways to reduce our transport emissions. I did my best to promote this consultation exercise to the residents of Oldfield Park Ward, and I thank all of those who contributed to this consultation exercise on livable neighbourhoods. Both the ongoing pandemic and increasing global temperatures highlight the need for us to tackle obesity and air pollution and public health more widely. And we need to promote and facilitate active travel in our communities to enhance road safety for the most vulnerable of our users of streets and roads. I would urge the Cabinet, after you have reviewed the consultation responses, to agree to delegate the options for the 3 livable neighbourhood strategies as outlined in your papers. Many of the communities I represent in the Oldfield Park ward have contacted me directly and are enthusiastic about the benefits these three combined strategies can bring to our community, the wider local authority, and of course, our single planet. However, work on one of these issues, that of residents parking, has already started in the Oldfield Park ward and the wider Oldfield Park area. A parking stress survey of this area was carried out in October 2019, and it's resulted in highlighting the impact of commuter car parking in the Oldfield Park area and the impact Bear Flat RPZ created just before the last local elections. My question to Councillor Wright and Councillor Butters is, what is the status of this parking stress research on a potential Oldfield Park residents parking zone? And given this work has only been paused due to the COVID-19 pandemic, when can I expect to see the council taking positive steps to consult with the residents of Oldfield Park on whether or not they would like a new residents parking zone to cover their area? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevenson-McGool. I'd now like to invite Councillor Joanna Wright to introduce the report, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Please note that there are minor corrections to 6.1 and 9.2. Cabinet, it is my great pleasure to propose to you tonight this paper on livable neighbourhoods. This paper is without doubt one of the most radical changes to transport infrastructure and the reorganisation of road space ever presented to Cabinet. Transport is one of the few sectors where our carbon emissions are still rising. This council has declared a climate emergency, and it is necessary that we find innovative new ways of enabling residents in Bath and North East Somerset Council to share road space. Livable neighbourhoods will help to reframe how communities use the public highway so that the greater emphasis is given to those using active travel. Livable neighbourhoods will help to create pleasant, healthy and safe places for people to live, work and be. There is no doubt that transport is one of the most difficult and most contentious policy areas that we as councillors have to consider. Behaviour change is one of the toughest nuts in politics to crack. Asking all sections of the community to rethink their travel choices is a demanding ask. Let us remember that 24% of households have no access to a car, that the youngest, the oldest, and the poorest are unfairly affected by the dominance of vehicles, and rarely do we hear the concerns of those that are marginalised. What we do know is that the number of vehicles on our roads has increased significantly and is still rising. Whatever we do or do not do, congestion costs all of us in lost productivity and poor public health. Livable neighbourhoods is a cost-effective way to reduce the dominance of vehicles in residential areas and helps to prioritise active travel. The overall aim of this policy is to reduce vehicle use, rather than divert traffic elsewhere. Data shows that 42% of journeys made by a private car for trips that are less than 3 kilometres in Bath. Many of us can replace short car journeys with an active travel choice. The positive impact that these changes to travel will be seen in a plethora of ways: the environment, health, safety and community. The Livable Neighbourhoods policy will enable a range of measures to be deployed, including modal filters, expansion of residents' car parking, school streets, strategic corridor improvements to build capacity for active travel, and investment in on-street electric vehicle charging. All these schemes will maintain vehicle access to homes and businesses and can be designed without disadvantaging disabled people and other people with restricted mobility. Livable neighbourhoods are not about stopping individuals using a vehicle. They are about encouraging unnecessary car use. The Council has taken this policy to the public and received 1,595 responses. And I am delighted to say significant support has been given to this new policy. Over 3/4 of respondents agreed with the proposed approach to developing livable neighbourhood schemes. Many highlighted the need for improved walking and cycle infrastructure, particularly to support children travelling to school. Residents emphasised the need for improved cycle links from areas outside of Bath into the city. Many respondents flagged fairness and justice issues around the potential displacement of traffic onto main roads. Therefore, the council will enhance capacity on the highway network for public transport, walking and cycling to mitigate potential displacement of traffic as part of the overall strategic delivery plan. Over 3/4 of respondents supported the council's approach to reviewing and expanding residents' parking zones. Residents have raised issues regarding the needs of disabled people, charges, enforcement, student parking and hotel permits. And as asked by Councillor Sean Stevenson-McGall, what are we doing to take this work forward? Work is already underway to expand residents' parking zones in parts of Bath. Consultation on some of these schemes is expected to commence in early 2021, subject to approval of this policy this evening. Over 3/4 of respondents supported proposals on street electric charging. 1/5 of respondents were concerned about placing electric vehicle infrastructure in the carriageway to avoid obstructing the footway. Space for non-electric vehicles, that's hard to say, will need to be reduced as a consequence. But it is imperative that we shift vehicles from fossil fuels to new sustainable energy options. For years, the council has tinkered around the edges of community problems with ad hoc traffic calming schemes, the odd bollard and the strips of yellow paint. Livable Neighbourhoods policy, for the first time, addresses the issues faced by communities in a holistic way. Neil and I recognise that this is not going to be easy and that many will only be convinced when they see it in operation. This will require an inordinate level of political will and will take courage from the politicians as well as the communities to take forward these necessary changes. We are delighted to have the support of the Royal United Hospital to our proactive approach, and they are keen to work with the council to actively engage with us as this strategy develops. Can I assure you all, both Neil and myself will be monitoring the introduction of this policy closely. We want this to be a success. It is my contention that this new policy will deliver on the many promises made by this Liberal Democrat administration. The council's aim is to create a connected city fit for the future, which will promote active travel, and in so doing, the council will deliver on the climate emergency, it will deliver on public health, and it will deliver on social justice. Before moving to recommendations, I would like to acknowledge the amazing work done by our transport team in the development of this policy and the consultation with groups that they have been involved in through this process. Thank you. Therefore, Cabinet, I am very pleased to propose this paper and ask that you endorse the recommendations as printed in sections 2, paragraphs 2.1 and 2.3. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. Do I have someone to second this, please? Councillor Butters, do you wish to speak?
I do. Thank you very much, Chair. I have pleasure in seconding this very significant motion. The Council's Climate Emergency Plan, approved in October 2019, recommends a major shift to walking, cycling and public transport to reduce transport emissions. The prime aim is to improve health and well-being across the area. In line with other forward-thinking authorities, this would be by providing fairer access for those travelling primarily on foot and by bicycle, creating healthy outdoor spaces for everyone to enjoy. If we don't do this, we and our children and grandchildren will be paying a heavy price for our inaction. Livable neighbourhoods are a cost-effective way of reducing the dominance of vehicles in residential areas and prioritising active travel. To give an idea of the scale of the task before us, the emergency plan indicated that in order to meet our net zero decarbonisation target by 2030, we will need to have reduced the number of vehicle miles per person by 25% and effect a modal shift to sustainable modes of transport of 7%. Note that the aim is to reduce overall vehicle use rather than divert traffic elsewhere. As with many other activities, there are some people who, maybe having cycled from an early age, are happy to tackle busy streets, even with the associated pollution, or of course, simply walk their pavements. There will be a lot more, however, who might well consider walking or cycling, but instinctively get in their cars for a short journey without giving the matter a second thought. It is these people we hope can be persuaded not to give up their cars altogether, but to use them less frequently than before. But more walking and cycling simply won't happen unless these notions become more obviously pleasant and safe. Let's see how we can offer choice to attract people out of their cars, if of course they're lucky enough to have one, which many people now don't, as you've heard. When streets are created primarily for people rather than vehicles, they provide opportunities for better social connections. That means better mental health. They engender thriving local communities, more sustainable living, and encourage more empowered communities. Giving people a say in the design of their streets means much greater ownership of people's environments. Livable neighbourhoods offer great benefits, not only for children, in itself hugely important, but for the elderly and disabled. So if this motion is passed, what would the next stage of this journey look like? If this is going to work, Joe and I need the ideas of members across the council chamber. This is not the preserve of one particular party. We would like all councillors to give thought to what opportunities might present themselves in their wards. And not just in Bath. What opportunities might there be in the towns and rural areas? We do recognise this is not just a city issue. This is a great opportunity to take a major leap forward. Let's seize the day. Carpe diem. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Butters. I'd now like to open the debate and invite Councillor Samuel to speak, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, today, on the day that the Centre for Cities published information showing that nitrogen dioxide levels post-lockdown had increased across most cities in Britain, we can see that action is still needed to tackle the problem of excessive vehicle pollution. I really strongly welcome these proposals because I think they seem to command strong support within our communities. I have been campaigning to get these policy proposals in place for over 3 years in my ward, and it was whilst I was chairman of Camden Residents Association before being elected that the association first produced ideas that we would now call livable neighbourhoods. Aggressive driving, inconsiderate rat running, intolerance of buses, hostility to cyclists, pavement parking, and even driving on pavements are all things that I see, sadly, on a daily basis in my ward. Residents who live in what should be traffic-reduced areas will welcome these steps by the council, and I thank Joanna Wright and Neil Butters for bringing them to fruition. I also want to comment on the need to expand residents' parking zones and simplify the process. I have worked with several groups of residents in the east of my ward who want to see residents' parking zones extended. I well recall a meeting with the then cabinet member, Councillor Shelford, 2 years ago, when he told residents the council had lost petitions they had presented and that after 7 years, they would have to go back to the beginning of the RPZ process. That is no way to treat residents, and I am still disgusted that the conversation took place. It was appalling. The problem we were trying to solve was that all-day parking by commuters parking for free in residential streets to the detriment of residents who live in the city and contribute to its life and community. These commuters always park just outside the current zones, which in Walcott are zones 15 and 16, and cause daily problems of antisocial behaviour and nuisance for residents. In one street, cars are known to turn up at 8 o'clock in the morning and actually hover in the street waiting for residents to move out. And it's a real problem. So I hope at long last now we will be able to consult residents on extensions to residents' parking zones in the east of my ward. I'd like to say that while I do recognise that there are particular problems in my ward that need solving, I do understand that it is not possible for the council to undertake these policies right across Bath, North East Somerset in a single go. Resources are too stretched and workloads are too high to do that. However, it must be recognised, I believe, that the north of the city has particular problems that need tackling as soon as possible. Over the coming year, I believe we will see the beginning of long needed transport changes. Proper safe cycling routes will appear. CO2 charging in RPZs will discourage the use of larger polluting vehicles. The clean air zone will improve air quality. Further restrictions on vehicles entering the historic core of Bath and the proposals in this report will create a paradigm shift in the way that our streets are used, away from the domination by fossil fuel powered vehicles to more sustainable modes of transport. All these actions form part of this administration's clear commitment to carbon reduction and are necessary where transport emissions form a third of UK carbon dioxide emissions. I would like to thank the Cabinet members and officers who worked so hard to develop this challenging agenda from a standing start in 2019, after the 4 wasted years under the previous administration. It's tough work, but it's going in the right direction. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. Can I call Councillor Dave Wood, please?
Yes, I had a couple of comments to add. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate the sensible approach that I've seen in putting this together, particularly around considering access for emergency vehicles and recycling trucks within the Livable Neighbourhoods project. That's good to see. The second comment I'd like to make is to kind of pick up on Councillor Butter's point that low traffic neighbourhoods and livable neighbourhoods aren't just for our towns and cities. Their traditional model does lend itself more to those urban areas because often modal filters just aren't suitable for rural areas and villages. However, I think we recognise that the spirit of livable neighbourhoods can be applied to our villages. In some of those villages, people don't feel safe walking to the shop, to the pub or to the school or to visit people, and they can't make those active travel choices at the moment. So I'd like to particularly note that point and look forward to more work on this in the future, and to thank the Cabinet members and the officers for all the efforts they've put into this so far.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Appleyard.
Yeah, thanks very much, Leader. Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, a big congratulations to Joanne and Neil for working incredibly hard to bring this forward for us. I mean, it's not an easy ask at all. And I think, in my recollection, in being involved in local politics, they're one of the only transport portfolio holders that have really tried to get into something that's going to make a big difference to our community going forward. What pleased me was that I noticed there was recognition of many parts of our community that need particular consideration, those with visual impairments or loss of sight. That's very important. And also, I think by freeing up our roads, we're going to start changing that balance on some of our inequalities that we experience. People look at Bath as being quite prosperous and very vibrant in many ways, and it is, but there are huge pockets of inequalities. And by opening up our communities and enable people to connect with each other. I mean, do you know what? I mean, I come from a pretty much a car-based existence 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah, I just jump in the car. And I think, like many other residents, we're finding that just walking somewhere, it just opens it up. You see more people, you speak to more people, and you actually see your neighbourhood much better. And that all goes towards improving our mental health. And so, you know, I was just thinking that when, you know, I listened to Richard speak and that the car has dominated a lot of our thinking. You know, we were talking about the parking troubles. I mean, Larkhall, I mean, is a perfect example. It is an unofficial parking ride in many ways, and it causes a huge amount of frustration to our residents, everything like this. But it's within our gift to actually address that balance. We don't want to actually demonise the car because, I mean, it has some incredible uses and for us, but we just really need to take advantage of what's available to us to be able to walk and cycle and really enjoy it, and basically get that mental health element sort of back to where it should be. So congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Appleyard. I'm seeing if there was anybody else who wished to speak. Councillor Kevin Guy.
Thank you, Dina. Yeah, I'd just like to start by congratulating both Joe and Neil on an excellent piece of work. It's a lot of effort and time's gone into this, and they've taken a lot of political flack to get to this position. So very well done on that. I'd like to reiterate what David has said as well. Our rural communities, particularly the villages that I represent, the parishes, Swainswick and Charlcombe, they're very much looking forward to working with you guys on livable neighbourhoods and creating low traffic neighbourhoods in those rural areas. It's really important for those smaller villages. And also with regards to school streets and school play streets, I know that we've discussed this in the past, and hopefully we can look at some really viable areas that we can make a difference and make these areas safer for our young people. So thank you very much, guys, and congratulations again.
Thank you. I'm just checking in the chat and I'm not seeing anybody else who wishes to speak. I've just perhaps just add a few final words before I invite Councillor Wright to sum up. It looks like there's great expectations following this policy, so I suspect our work is not done merely by having a policy. So, Councillor Wright.
Thank you very much, Councillor Romero. Yes, thank you very much for your support, Cabinet, this evening on livable neighbourhoods and your commitment to this new policy. Just taking up a few of the things that various people have said. The future matters. Our children, all our children and their children matter. And the reason why we have to make significant change is because the climate emergency really does exist. And unless we reduce our carbon emissions, they won't have a future. So any journey that we can take in a way that is sustainable will make a difference to their lives. We might not see the impact of that today, but it will make the difference for people of tomorrow. And that is something I would like many people to hold when they make journeys in the future or tomorrow. The issue of residents' parking zones is a major concern, and how we take that forward is going to be important in this piece of work. I really recognise there has been significant amounts of congestion, pollution, rat running, bad behaviour, and this is by people in vehicles. So let's not demonise the vehicles, let's recognise that it's people's behaviour in the vehicles that does that. And whenever we are in a vehicle, that we can consider other people and their journeys. If you do see somebody walking or cycling, recognise that their journey might take a little longer and we might need to be a bit more considerate of them. Picking up on the issue of the rural communities, indeed, livable neighbourhoods invariably has come out of the urban landscape, and no one has really quite yet transferred how we take that into the rural area. And one of the great gifts of being part of Bath and North East Somerset is that we do have a very large rural community that equally needs to be served by having vehicles and moving them around, but equally by having speeds that are acceptable so people can move around easily and to consider those journeys in a different way. So how do we support that and how do we work towards that? And finally, on school streets, I am very concerned, and the reason why I've come into this room was because of children and their journeys to and from school. We know today that more children on average spend more time at home inside their houses than the average prisoner. They do less exercise outside. Their bodies don't get the development that they should have. And that's awful that we now live in a society where children are essentially imprisoned in their homes because the way the vehicle has dominated the landscape. And the reason that I am very committed to this piece of work, and as Councillor Romero has rightly pointed out, this is just the beginning of putting in the foundation stones, and there's a huge expectation and a lot more work still to do, is because we really need to think about those lives and how they can have fantastic physical bodies for the rest of their lives because they used them as young people, because they felt safe in their neighbourhoods to go out and play and have a good time. I reiterate that the level of political will required to take this forward will be significant, and that it will be in fact deeds, not words, that we will be remembered by. Thank you. I recommend that the council moves this motion as written.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wright. We now move to the vote, and I will call your names in alphabetical order and ask you to indicate if you are voting for or against the motion. Thank you. Councillor Appleyard.
Absolutely for.
Thank you. Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Butters.
For.
Councillor Crosley.
For.
Councillor Guy.
For.
Councillor Romero, for. Councillor Samuel.
For.
Councillor Wood.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Have I missed anybody out? Thank you. Jack, could you confirm the vote, please?
Yes, that's unanimous for. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, as I indicated, I did say at 7:30 I would call for a small break, because it's never very good for us just to sit staring at a screen for hours and hours on end. With the Cabinet's agreement, I would like to suggest we have a 5-minute break now and then pick up the rest of the agenda after that. Thank you. Well, welcome back, everyone. I'm just waiting a couple of moments for the rest of Cabinet to show that they are here. So I think I'm just waiting for a couple more of Cabinet to return. Well, I think perhaps it would be fairer, certainly, to our speaker who still wishes to address the meeting, if we restart now at item 12, and this is the Baines Local Plan partial update. And I'd like to invite Councillor Stevenson-McGool to address the meeting.
Thank you very much, Councillor Romero. Firstly, I'd like to warmly welcome the Council's proposal, if agreed tonight, to consult on a range of various updates to the local plan. Although I strongly welcome the proposed consultation to strengthen policies to deliver on the climate emergency, from biodiversity net gain to retrofitting of properties and sustainable construction, I particularly want to talk tonight about the key issues impacting the communities of Oldfield Park that I represent, namely parking standards, HMOs and student accommodation. Oldfield Park has been transformed since I came to Bath as a student some 30 years ago. Due to the expansion of higher education in this country, millions of young people have benefited from going to university, and the country has benefited from their skills and contribution to the economy and the wider society. However, this welcomed expansion of UK higher education, although bringing economic and cultural benefits to the host cities and communities, has unfortunately not been accompanied by strategies over this time to house students on university campuses. Historically, student housing has been left to the free market. This problem is seen in university towns and cities up and down the countries, and local authorities like our own have tried to play catch up over the years. The introduction of the Article 4 directive during the Liberal Democrat administration from 2011 to 15 and its strengthening under the previous Conservative administration have done a lot to improve improve the community that I represent. However, the proposed consultation, as outlined on page 10 of the thing, goes further, and this will help strengthen the community that I represent. Many in the community that I represent in Oldfield Park have contacted me and are enthusiastic about the benefits that these proposed changes will bring. In particular, the policy intensification of HMOs. And I hope if after the public consultation in April 21, these will become adopted later in the year. Page 13 highlights the policies related to our higher education providers in the city, and I would remind Cabinet members that if you allow our universities to expand their academic space and building, they will normally fill this with more students, and those students do need to be housed somewhere in our city. Finally, I welcome the inclusion of consultation on a new parking standard in a supplementary planning guidance, and specifically the element around HMO parking. To many of my residents, March 2022 may seem a long way off, but given the amount of work that I know officers and councillors will have to go through to deliver these consultation exercises on the local plan, and your adoption of the livable neighbourhood strategies on the last item, I am thankful that you have decided to include HMO parking alongside tougher policies on HMOs in these consultation exercises. Please do support Councillor Ball and the communities of Oldfield Park and agree to the recommendations outlined in 2.1 of the paper and report you have in front of you tonight. My communities will welcome this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevenson-McGool. Before I ask Councillor Ball to introduce this item, I should check if any Cabinet had any questions to ask of Councillor Stevenson-McGaul. My apologies also, I missed that opportunity in the previous item. And can I remind all of Cabinet of Councillor Rigby's statement that she made at the beginning of the meeting? Thank you. Councillor Ball, would you like to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Leader. Can I thank also Councillor Stevenson-McGaul and Councillor Rigby for their contributions this evening. They will all be taken into account in moving forward the consultation process. Before I start, I'd like to pay tribute to the work of all members of the Planning Policy Department, the amount of work they put into place to get the plan ready for consultation in record time. The Baines local plan sets out policy determination plan applications. The local plan was adopted in 2014 and now it needs to be updated to ensure that the policies help to deliver the Council's current priorities. The full review of the local plan needs to take place alongside preparation of the WECA Spatial Development Strategy. But as this will not be the 2023, we're undertaking partial review of the local plan now to update key policies. This includes policies helping to address the climate and ecological emergencies, including policy to facilitate renewable energy generation, sustainable construction, retrofitting buildings and biodiversity net gain, ensuring sufficient supply of new homes for residents, updating the parking standards, including HMO parking for the first time, reviewing some of the site allocations, assisting with the green recovery in light of the impact of the pandemic on district's economy. This process has had to be further accelerated in order to progress before introduction of some of the national planning reforms, which could further cause delays. Therefore, we need to avoid the scope of the review becoming too broad. The next step is a publication in January, February of options to give local communities and stakeholders the opportunity to have a sound direction of the change before we draft new policies. In light of the comments we received, the draft plan update is due to be published in the spring of 2021 for formal consultation. The plan will then have received examination before it's adopted. As the plan progresses, more weight can be given in determining planning applications. Attachment 1 to this report sets out in more detail the proposed scope and nature of the suggested policy changes, and these will form the basis of an options consultation document for January-February public engagement. I want to draw attention to the addendum to the report, which clarifies the planning policy options regarding recreation ground in Bath. This will be included in the options consultation document. Some of the policy changes are dependent on supplementary planning documents, and this report also sets out the programme for updating and preparing these alongside the local plan parcel update. I'd like to point out that we are arranging a webinar which will focus on helping people engage with local plan making process. The report states that this will take place on the 14th of December. However, we've had to revise this date, and a new date will be 21st December at 6 p.m. We'll also be carrying out work on a number of supplementary planning documents, including Design Guide SPD for new development in Bath and North East Somerset. This will incorporate walking and cycling infrastructure guidance, existing building height study, house and multiple location SPD review, planning obligations supplementary plan document review, sustainable construction retrofitting SPD review, locally listed heritage assets SPD, biodiversity net gain SPD, parking standards SPD. There's a huge broad range of subjects being taking place in a local review of a partial review of the plan. You can imagine the whole plan will be a lot more than that, but it is very good progressive work taking place. I would like to ask the Cabinet tonight to agree to the policy options and proposals attachment 1 as a basis of public engagement, agrees revised Baines local development scheme and attachment 2, and C, agreed approach to public engagement in section 10 of this report, and D, the delegate authority, the Director of Development and Public Protection, in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Planning and Housing, to finalise the local plan parcel update options consultation document and the local development scheme. I therefore move.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ball. Do I have a seconder for this paper, please?
Yes.
Councillor Crossley, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Leader. First of all, like Tim, planning policy is considered, deliberative, consultative, and most frustratingly to us all, time consuming and takes a long, long time. And this is what often our residents don't fully appreciate, is just the length of time that you go through in pulling a full policy review. So the fact that Tim and his officers have come up with this partial review in this record time is just a credit to everyone involved. And there is concern about government planning changes coming up, as mentioned in 3.4. But this interim review will enable us to keep with our current housing numbers, as any new proposal from either government or WECA or any other body will likely to increase the housing numbers that we're asked to take quite considerably. So there's a lot in this review. The climate agenda, lots of plus points, but there's lots that people can already do in their house. Don't assume that the answer is no just because you live in a listed building or you live in Oldfield Park or you live anywhere. Look at the advice already available on offer both at Baines and the Bath Preservation Trust. There's a lot you can do already that you maybe haven't thought. You might even think you need to go planning permission. Check what you can do and help us all on the climate agenda, because we need to tackle that jointly and together. But there's no doubt that one of the things that attracts more anger and frustration and lack of comprehension about policy than any other thing is HMO. The HMOification of Bath is blighting our city, and it's a problem that is slowly spreading to our other towns and villages. So it's not just a Bath issue. And tightening these policies will reduce the conversion rate and enable us to move robustly to defend family homes. And that is what we need above all in Bath and North East Somerset, is to defend our family homes as we face the multiple pressures of very high land values and people coming in, and we need to make sure that there are places that all income streams and all families can afford to stay and live in their communities that they choose to live and not be driven out. We must ensure a balanced community. And I welcome putting the university needs back to the universities and their campus sites at Claverton Down for the University of Bath and the site at Causton Newton St Low for Bath Spa University. It is quite right and proper that we ask the universities to cater for their growth and to cater for their needs more than at the loss of family homes. And I'd encourage all residents to engage in both this partial review and the full review that will immediately follow. We need your views, we need your input, because the more input we have, the more robust the policy is when it's inspected independently by government inspectors. And it's not just about housing and climate, it's also about transport. And transport is absolutely crucial. And ST2 points that out. We have to look at where the transport hubs are, where the transport needs are, how we get people back onto sustainable travel, and how we particularly get people back onto trains, as well as buses. When we come through this COVID-19, it will be nice to see bus transport regaining the confidence it was growing with beforehand. So in conclusion, this has been a great start and a great achievement for this document to be produced at such short and quick notice. And I use the word quick in planning policy deadline terms, even though our residents might think a year and a half is not quick. This is an amazingly speedy document that is robust and hasn't been diminished by the speed with which it's been produced. So I'm more than happy to second this policy as put forward by Councillor Ball.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crossley. I will now open this up for debate, and I see in the chat that I have Councillor Salmo who would like to speak first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I also welcome the proposals in this report as they go to public consultation. And I want to highlight some of the aspects within the proposals. I am delighted at the suite of measures proposed in relation to carbon reduction in construction. These are long overdue and represent real progress in directing the building industry to develop homes and other buildings that are fit for the future. I also welcome the complementary policies on environmental conservation, which are so important given the pressure on natural habitats due to human activity. Like other speakers, I am also very pleased to see the proposed changes to HMO policy, which could limit the intensification of residential units in areas of already high density. My ward, Walcott, is the most densely populated ward in Bath and North East Somerset, and yet in the last week alone, I have seen 3 applications put forward for planning approval to convert single houses into HMO units. This is what is going on within our city, and it is undesirable. I'm very supportive of the proposed changes in policy changes to purpose-built student accommodation. In my view, too many of these have been built in Bath over the past years on valuable land, better suited to mixed housing development. These developments do need to be managed and controlled because they are purely profit orientated, and in my view, and it is my own personal view, contribute little to the life of the city. I believe it is better, as Councillor Crossley has said, that accommodation is provided on campuses wherever possible and not on prime land in the city centre. So I welcome the proposal to allocate land specifically and determine whether there is a need for individual development proposals. I do hope that the policies, when they emerge, will impose rigorous tests on developers that clearly show the need, and that our universities are involved closely in the capacity planning. Personally, I favour the construction of a sequential test, such as used in retailing, but I am content to see the detailed plans when they come forward, and I'll be very interested to see what the public's views are. Finally, I do welcome the evidence of clear cooperation with our universities and the Royal United Hospital. These are major employers in the city of Bath, and as a result, they are indirectly and directly responsible for significant carbon impacts within our communities. So it is very important that the council works closely with these organisations and other employers to improve the city for everyone. I'm very positive about these proposals. I think they've been very well developed in a very short time, and I now look forward to the public response to them, and I hope we get a good response, as Councillor Crossley has said. So I'm very pleased to see the work that Councillor Ball and his officers have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. I'm having a look in the chat to see if there's anyone else who would like to speak. I'm not seeing anybody, in which case then can I hand back to Councillor Ball to sum up, please?
I'll be very brief, Chairman. But can I thank my colleagues for inputs as well this evening? It's very, very useful to have them actually echoing the points from the reports. Officers have worked very hard on these issues, and as Councillor Crossley and Councillor Samuel said, in planning terms, this is very quick, a year and a half. I remember putting the last core strategy through the council in 2014. That took 7 years to get through. So 18 months to get this well into working situation is miraculous. And bearing in mind, we're actually running 3 plans at the moment, also running the SDS with WECA, and we're also running our own local plan, which are coming in 2023. So there's a lot of work being done, a lot of radical work being done as well on the climate change and nature emergency issues as well, which all fall into these plans as well. And this will bring a lot of this stuff forward now, so we can get towards achieving the carbon neutral ambitions for 2030. So all this planning policy issues, you may think is planning policy, but it does help other areas as well. The working with universities to try and get them back on campus is a progressive issue, and it's taken a long time coming forward. Freeing up family homes is again actually essential for the city, particularly with the government's requirements on us to build yet more homes as well. So the sooner we can actually square that circle, the better. I therefore recommend the paper to Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ball. So we now move to the vote, and I will again call you each in alphabetical order to indicate if you are for or against this paper. Councillor Appleyard.
For.
Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Butters.
For.
Councillor Crossley.
For.
Councillor Guy.
For.
Councillor Romero. For. Councillor Samuel.
For.
Councillor Wood.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
Have I missed anybody? In which case, can I ask Jack to confirm the decision, please?
That is unanimous for, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much. We now move on, and we are now on item 13. I do not believe we have any ad hoc speakers. I certainly don't have anyone who has registered to speak before we move on with this particular report. Thank you. So I'd like to invite Councillor Samuel to introduce the report and to move the recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, in moving these recommendations in this report, I just want to say that the Council's property holdings have been faithful servants to the City of Bath Council and now Bath North East Somerset Council and its community for many years. The holdings have produced income to the council that has been used to support a wide range of services and the improvement of our area. And our staff manage over 1,200 properties with a book value of £500 million. So by any measure, it's a jewel in the council's crown that must be looked after and nurtured. But the time has come to consider a change of direction. I recognised this last year when I took over responsibility for the portfolio and began to look at the way it was run following two corporate policy scrutiny committee call-ins. I agreed then that a more comprehensive look was needed at the way the council runs its estate and how it makes decisions. Now, the work is complex and divided into three parts. The first is an internal look at how the council organises its activities, and the second is an external look at how the council's assets are positioned in the market. The final part is financially related, and in the light of COVID, seems to answer how the council can wean itself off reliance on property income to provide its services. The budget for 21-22 will begin to answer how the decoupling of income from service provision can take place. So I'll say no more on that subject just now. I want to say something about the objectives I have for this service and also the governance I believe the council needs to have in place. Elected councillors are ultimately responsible for the performance of this portfolio, and that falls to me and the Cabinet to uphold. However, I believe a delicate balance is necessary between property portfolio decisions and the freedom for officers to manage the estate on a day-to-day basis without undue pressure from members. More rigorous governance is required, drawing on national best practice in the public and private sectors, and I intend to bring these changes forward for agreement in the near future in 2021. The second question I have is a much wider one. Whose benefit is the estate for? Is it for income maximisation? Is it for community benefit? Is it for other services? Is it for tenants? Well, the answer is that it's all of these, but ultimately a policy position will be needed that prioritises these competing interests. And again, I intend to bring forward proposals to address these conflicts during 2021. Lastly, I want to emphasise the huge beneficial opportunity that exists within a fresh look at this service. Section 8 in the report highlights the enormous potential contribution our estate can make to climate change mitigation. I am determined to ensure that the council is a leading force in the way that we run our estate and an exemplar to other landlords. And I know from my conversations with other landlords in the City of Bath in particular, that there is a lot of joint enthusiasm for this approach. Madam Chairman, this report does mark a turning point, but not a conclusion in this important work, which is currently one of our highest corporate priorities. More will follow in the coming months. So with that, I move the recommendations in the report, and it may be that we would like Mandy Bishop, who has carried out quite a lot of work on this, to speak after the after the recommendations have been seconded. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel. I would now like to call on someone to second this. Councillor Appleyard, would you like to speak as well?
Yeah, very briefly, Chair, because I think there's a lot to be said on this going forward. I think COVID, without a doubt, has actually highlighted a couple of challenges for us as a council, because it's very difficult to be in a position where we want to support maybe some of our local businesses, but also the landlord, and where we would obviously want to sort of work with those small businesses. We also have a responsibility to look after the asset and get the best return for our residents. So it's a very complicated piece, and we are in a changing world. Retail is changing, small businesses are changing, and I think this is a timely review, really. So I'm happy to second this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Appleyard. May I invite Mandy Bishop to speak? So Mandy is our Chief Operating Officer of the Council.
Thank you, Councillor Romero, and thank you for the introductions and the proposals and seconding from Councillor Samuel and Councillor Appleyard. And as they both have articulated, we are indeed fortunate in Bath and North East Somerset to be the custodians of an extensive estate, and not just estate and land holdings as well. And as that Councillor Samuel indicated, prior to the pandemic, we had commenced a review of our property arrangements. But the report clearly indicates that we've had to accelerate this work, and it's been necessary and timely as a result of COVID and the impacts that has had, not just on our commercial estate, which we've heard quite a lot about already, but also our operational estate, which we require for our own arrangements as well. So I was just going to highlight a little bit more, a few more points along those strands that Councillor Samuel actually articulated at the start of his discussions. So firstly, if I move to the four key strands that we are looking at, the new estate strategy, and as Councillor Samuel indicated, it's really important that we define at that strategic level what our objectives are for the estate, and look at those conflicting priorities that he outlined. But it's not just about our objectives, it is about being clear and transparent about our governance arrangements and our decision-making processes, and the approach generally we intend to take as well, not just with our property but our land holdings. And I include in that community asset transfers, and there's a lot of interest in our local communities, particularly around asset transfer, which is really important point to us as well, and engaging those communities in that process. The developing strategy will align with the priorities contained in the council's corporate plan for 2020 and 24. I think the last time we had this extensive a review of our estate strategy and asset management planning was back in 2012. So it's very timely to bring that up to date and realign it with areas such as climate emergency and the ecological emergency. The second area of focus, which I wanted to talk about, was the changes to our operational estate. And like many of our organisations that we're in common with, our teams have had to work from home predominantly since the first lockdown, and that is very much in accordance with national public health guidelines. However, we've taken this as an opportunity to review our future ways of working and consequently our own office requirements. And I'm pleased to say we've made some quite significant progress on that. We've already reduced our overheads by reducing some of our leasehold costs, and we've are in the process of letting some of our office accommodation in Bath to other public sector organisations. What that does mean in practice is that our intention is to redesign our Keynsham Civic Centre building to ensure we maximise the efficiency and use of this award-winning building as it was when it was designed and built in 2014. Keynsham will become our primary office base for our staff, who will work in a more flexible way, ensuring that we maximise the use of our digital facilities and our investment in digital technology as well. It's our intention that our teams will work in a blended way with a mix of office use, home use and working from other localities. And we're working closely with other local authorities and public sector organisations to look at the joint use of buildings for our staff across those sectors as well. As Councillor Samuel spoke about, one of the other sort of strands for this work is the commercial estate review. And pre-COVID, as he indicated, our commercial lettings and estate have held up well, despite the challenges faced by town and city centres over the last 10 years. But that said, COVID has had a significant impact upon our income and the levels of voids, and the impact of which has been reported in sort of quite detailed financial reports, both to this Cabinet and Council in recent months. The sharp and potentially long-term shift in how commercial buildings are used has meant that we've had to move quickly and seek advice. And I'm pleased to say that we have engaged Montague Evans, one of the market leaders in this piece of work, to aid us in assessing our current strengths and weaknesses, and also looking at our future strategic direction for both our commercial estate, focusing on commercial estate, but also some of the broader aspects we may wish to consider. And I will particularly draw Cabinet's attention to sections 3.24 to 3.26, which provide further information on that commercial estate review, which is due to report back in the first quarter of 2021. And I know there's a lot of member interest across the board on that document and how we might take the findings forward. The fourth area for focus is the service review of our operational structures, processes and procedures. And I'm pleased to say we've already commenced work on that, and we've undertaken a lot of work in recent months on our supply chain arrangements as well. But, you know, it's accepted that we do have to reposition our service, and we have to look at some of our processes and procedures so that we can be more agile moving forward. And that's the piece of work that certainly the officers will be taking forward as a priority over the coming months. And finally, I'd like to bring Cabinet's attention to the indicative timetable for the key activities that I've highlighted in section 3.5.8 at the end of the report, and the fact that there will be, you know, we have agreed with Councillor Samuel that there will be good member engagement in this process, and we intend to engage scrutiny as well. I'm pleased to say that I've spoken to the chair of scrutiny today about the role that scrutiny can play as well at help us fashion some of those priorities moving forward. I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Councillor Romero. I'll hand back to you.
Thank you very much, Mandy. And can I also say thank you for all the work that you've put in on this particular issue and in this review. So I'd now like to open the floor for debate, and I have Councillor Crosley, who has indicated that he wishes to speak.
Thank you very much, Leader. This is an excellent paper, and it's quite right that every so often on a periodic review we actually do review our property holdings. They are extensive, they are diverse, and they provide a number of different facilities and services for us. But from my point of view, the absolute key and crucial thing is that they stay with the council, and it's quite, you know, people should be aware that many times over the last 2 decades, people have flirted the idea about outsourcing our property management, and that would be the worst of all possible worlds, because once you've outsourced it, you are then dependent on contracts, and there will be some contracts are never total and will always miss something out, which you will then get charged. So I'm delighted that 3.24 is very clear that we are maintaining ownership. And I also think it's really good that we're having external challenge, and that is always helpful to any council and any commercial organisation, because we do live in changing times, and COVID has just highlighted and accelerated changes that were happening anyway, with things like the internet, and therefore officers not being the hub that they once were, and different ways of working. And so we've got these now cluster working hubs, which is a thing that we as a Liberal Democrat Council highlighted and initiated several years ago with the formation of the Guild. And there's now quite a few co-working hubs building up, and there's a new one that will be coming on stream just around the corner from the Guildhall. So climate change is a key factor. And again, as a council, I think we've shown our enlightenment in the fact that when we built the Keynsham new build, the cost and funding for that virtually came from our energy saving, from moving out of inefficient buildings into a building that was designed to cost virtually nothing to heat. And that was a lead and showed that as a council, we were thinking about climate change before it became a fashionable topic. And I think the Keynsham is being refreshed. And I think that's all to the credit. And we should just celebrate how efficient that is as a building in these times. There was just one thing I would like to challenge Richard on, and that is the word maximised in terms of income. I think on sometimes it's more important that a building is used rather than it's left empty because you set yourself an unattainable high rent for it. I think what we want is all our buildings to be living, and the best way to make sure they carry on living is to make sure they're used and in operation, not that we're hanging out for unachievable rents. So that's the only word I have a little bit of concern about in the whole report. If it was maximised, was thought of in terms of best value, then I would be 100% happy with this report, as opposed to the 99%, and I'm quite happy to support and endorse it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Crossley. I'm just checking if there's any other speakers. I do not see any other speakers. So, Councillor Samuel, can I ask you to sum up, please?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Well, I can say to Councillor Crossley, I used the words maximise, not because that's an objective, but that is a question, a legitimate question, perhaps better framed by him than me, that it is a balance, and I think I acknowledge that. But can I say, just for the avoidance of doubt, because I'm sure that it'll be within the in the opposition environment in no time at all, we are not doing a fire sale. We are not outsourcing this property portfolio. We are not selling the family silver or any of that. But what we do want to do is to make the whole complex property estate work better for the council and work better for the community. And that's the key objectives in here. We're not flogging things off, as I'm sure I'll be criticised of in the social media tomorrow by certain people. I thank the Cabinet for support on this. This is an interim report, effectively, and you are being asked to note and endorse its direction of travel. The work will come together in 2021, and it will take time after that to implement the many recommendations that I'm sure that will emerge out of Montague Evans' work and the work that Mandy and her colleagues have been doing. So we are on the beginning of a long journey here, as we were with the Livable Neighbourhoods work, but this is really important for the council strategically, and it's something I'm determined that we complete as far as we can in the next calendar year. So with that, Leader, I move the recommendations, which are to note and endorse the 2.1 to 2.3 in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. So I note that Councillor Crossley has temporarily left. I'm sure he will be back in a moment, but I will call our Cabinet in alphabetical order, but then I will put Councillor Crossley at the end of the queue, assuming that he is able to reconnect. So, Councillor Appleyard, would you like to vote for or against this paper?
For, thank you.
Councillor Ball?
For.
Councillor Butters?
For.
Oh, Councillor Crossley, you're back. Councillor Crossley?
For.
Councillor Guy?
For.
Councillor Romero? For. Councillor Samuel?
For.
Councillor Wood?
For.
And Councillor Wright?
For.
So I'm just going to check, have I missed anybody? I don't believe so, in which case, Jack, could you confirm the decision, please?
It's unanimous for, thank you.
Thank you. So we now are on the last item on the agenda, which is the future of destination management arrangements. I do not believe we have any speakers who are waiting to speak on this item. So in which case then I shall introduce the report. But before I do, I would just like to draw Cabinet's attention to the fact that there are 3 exempt appendices. And if nobody feels the need to reference these papers, I will keep this meeting in public session. But if you do feel the need to reference these, would you let me know? And then I will end the public session and we'll move into an exempt session. So can I just have any indication that anybody will want to refer to the exempt appendices? Thank you. In which case then I will now introduce the item. So this paper has come to Cabinet today to draw to a close a somewhat sorry state of affairs for the company charged with promoting Bath and the surrounding area. This company has been losing money since 2016, and despite new management being brought in last year, this position has not improved significantly. Clearly, COVID-19 has not helped the situation in the last 8 or so months, as we have had to close key tourist attractions such as the Roman Baths, and alongside the loss, we have suffered the loss of a wide range of associated revenue for the council, such as from car parking as well as from the commercial estate. We saw during the inter-lockdown period numbers of visitors starting to improve, but this also brought a risk, an increased risk to public health. With the launch of the vaccine rollout comes the promise of new hope, but until the majority of people across the globe have been vaccinated, I think it would be foolish to expect a return to the old normal of tourist numbers, either from the domestic or international market. This is at the same time as the climate emergency is rightly being given greater priority. Many people are becoming more aware of their impact on the planet and on levels of greenhouse gases. For some, this has already changed behaviours. For us as a council, we want to encourage that changed behaviour towards zero carbon living, which means traditional mass tourism with its associated negative consequences needs reconsidering. Despite this, tourism in some form will remain a vital part of our local economy. Pre-pandemic, some 9,000 people were employed within this industry. So we need to look at rebuilding this industry, but with a subtly changed focus in light of the changed world that we live in. It is clear with reduced council budgets and knowing that it's unlikely that tourism will be like it was pre-pandemic for the reasons that I have stated, we simply cannot afford a destination management company that runs at such a loss. I would like to recommend to Cabinet that we cut our losses with this company and support the new venture being proposed, that of Visit West. This will bring together the 2 mainstays of the West's tourism offer, Bristol and Bath, along with South Gloss and North Somerset. In this, we will not lose our own unique brand of Visit Bath, nor will we lose the booking office that many value. This will be housed at Bath Forum. The creation of Visit West has the approval of Visit England and Visit Britain. As a bigger organisation, the new destination management organisation will be more attractive to government, and so funding opportunities, which I believe are opportunities that had not been taken up by Visit Bath, will help build the offer for visitors to this region. Working with our neighbours means that some burdens will be shared without losing the economic value that a vibrant local visitor economy brings. So I would like to move the recommendations 2.1 to 2.7, which cover becoming a member of Visit West, the asset and employee transfer agreement, and arrangements to effect the voluntary strike-off, deal with outstanding company liabilities, and take leasehold assignment of the company's former premises. I so move. May I ask someone to second this proposal, please?
I will, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Samuel.
Well, in seconding this report, I also would like to move an amendment, an addition to the recommendations set out in the report. So this would be 2.9, but perhaps I'll come to the words for that at the end and ask if you will accept that. But I'll just say a few remarks before that. This is indeed a sorry saga that we have in this report before us. Not only is the council faced with the need to enter into these winding up arrangements with the company, which include the writing off of accumulated irrecoverable debt, but it does, as you say, signal the end of freestanding tourism arrangements for Bath North East Somerset, but more positively, the start of a new partnership, as you've described. My view is that the closure of this arrangement that we had is a serious matter that we all need to be concerned about. It does appear from the report that the company's finances began to drift into deficit in 2016, and it's very concerning to me that the previous administration failed to act as the losses of £588,000 were accumulated during their term in office, which is what we faced when we took control in 2019. I'm frankly quite astonished that the leader of the opposition, who was a member of the cabinet during that period, made no reference to this in his remarks in addressing this report. And that is quite astonishing to me. No doubt there were reasons why this situation arose, and I don't intend to go into those, but it does suggest to me that there were fundamental weaknesses in governance that led to this situation. It must never be the case that anything similar can happen again. So I will be examining this closely to see if the council needs to strengthen its governance relating to arm's length bodies and contracts. And I will be asking the Chief Executive to ensure such a review takes place as soon as possible to ensure that the Cabinet has assurance on similar governance arrangements. So I'm therefore moving this following amendment, which I hope you'll accept, Madam Chair. So new 2.9 reads, to instruct the Chief Executive to urgently undertake a review of governance arrangements for arm's length service providers and larger contract holders, and report the outcome of this review to the Cabinet as soon as practicable. I hope you will accept that amendment, Madam Chair, and as it is intended that we learn from this experience. Oh, would you know it, the phone goes, but I've come to the end, so you'll be pleased. I'll put it on mute.
Thank you very much, Councillor Samuel. And yes, I will be accepting the amendment that you moved. I would also like to correct myself. I think I moved the recommendations 2.1 to 2.7. I should have actually moved them up to 2.8. And therefore I am happy to add on an additional one to make it up to 2.9. So I'm now going to invite any of Cabinet who wishes to speak. I think I have Councillor Crosley who would like to speak.
Thank you very much, Leader. Visit Bath did indeed get into a sorry state under the previous administration, and it quite clearly needs sorting and correcting. And so I think, therefore, sharing back officers across 4 authority areas makes a lot of sense, while, as you point out, Leader, we will be still keeping the idea of Visit Bath, but it'll be working within Visit West. And I think that is really important. You know, it's not just the council that benefits from this, it's our very large number of hotels, bed and breakfasts, and other ways of people visiting us that people come here. And therefore, we do need a vibrant visitor economy because it keeps all the shops going. We've got more shops than a city of 100,000 needs. So it's not just the tourist attractions. People come here for a day out to sit in our bars and cafes, and we need that promoted, that Bath has multiple reasons for coming here for a good day out, from visiting wonderful heritage sites to taking the waters in the Thermae Spa, or indeed to shopping or having an outside coffee in one of our lovely coffees and bars and pubs and restaurants. So it is an important part of the economy, and it will remain an important part of the economy, even though we are looking to diversify, particularly with IT sector jobs and other high-tech jobs. Visitor accommodation will be a key part of it because it also employs so many of our residents. So it is vital. So I'm happy that we are looking to work in partnership with our 3 neighbouring authority areas. I think that's good. I think the way the shares are shared out and the way the voting parts are shared out is reasonable. And I think what is exciting about this is it has a substantial amount of income into the operation of the whole process from the private sector itself. So this will genuinely be a collaboration between the private sector and the public sector. And I think that is to be welcomed in these increasingly challenging times for local government. So I'm more than happy to second the report as amended.
Thank you very much, Councillor Crossley. I'm looking to see if there's any other speakers. I don't know if Councillor Guy, you wanted to speak, as I didn't need you to second the amendment.
No, I'm happy, thank you. Thank
you. So I will now sum up. As I said previously, I am moving 2.1 to 2.9. Tourism is important to Bath and also to North East Somerset. I believe that working in partnership within Visit West will be beneficial to all of our region, and not just simply to the city itself. And North East Somerset certainly has a somewhat untapped tourism offer that I think we need to explore more fully. I agree with Councillor Crossley that it is good to work with the private sector, and a collaboration between us as a council and private business as well will undoubtedly be good for us all. And my last point that I'd like to make is I would also like to thank officers for the work that they have done in getting this issue to a point where it can finally be resolved. So on that note, I would like to move to the vote, and I will call you once again in alphabetical order and ask you to vote for or against the motion. So Councillor Appleyard.
For the motion.
Councillor Ball.
For.
Councillor Butters.
For.
Councillor Crossley.
For.
Councillor Guy.
For.
Councillor Romero. For. Councillor Samuel.
For.
Councillor Wood.
For.
Councillor Wright.
For.
And thank you. And I don't believe I've left anyone out. Jack?
It's unanimous for. We all voted for.
Thank you very much. So that brings to an end the items on this agenda. I would like to thank everyone who watched the meeting on YouTube and everybody who participated in the meeting. So the next meeting of Cabinet will be held on the 11th of February in 2021. And I would like to wish you all, if we're not going to see you before that date, a very happy Christmas and a great new year. And I would now like to close the meeting. So thank you all.